The Galactic Council's emergency session had been called for the third time in 5 centuries. Around the crystalline amphitheater, representatives of 47 star-spanning civilizations sat in tense silence, their various appendages, tentacles, and pseudopods fidgeting with nervous energy. At the center of the gathering, a holographic display showed the same terrifying image that had been broadcast across every inhabited system. A single vessel, impossibly massive, drifting at the edge of the outer rim. High Chancellor Vaxtul of the hegemony clicked her mandibles in distress. The ship on the display dwarfed even the legendary Titan-class dreadnoughts of the fallen Korthak Empire. Conservative estimates put its length at over 200 kilometers, its width at nearly half that. But size alone wasn't what had sent shockwaves through the galaxy's power structure. It was the silence. For 3 standard cycles, the vessel had sat motionless at coordinates that marked the boundary between civilized space and the unknown regions. Every attempt at communication had been met with dead air. Long-range scans revealed energy signatures that defied understanding, power readings that suggested the ship could glass entire worlds without breaking stride. Yet it simply waited, like a predator choosing its moment to strike. The Nexari Collective has withdrawn their fleets to defensive positions around their core worlds, announced Ambassador Quilra, her scaled hide rippling with anxiety. The void-touched have gone completely dark. We haven't heard from them in 2 cycles. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The void-touched were notorious for their aggression, raiders who had terrorized the outer systems for generations. If they had retreated into hiding, the situation was worse than anyone had imagined. "Have we confirmed the ship's origin?" asked Regent Morthak, his cybernetic implants glowing with data streams. The former machine consciousness had seen the rise and fall of 3 galactic civilizations, but even his vast computational matrices couldn't predict the intentions of this mysterious arrival. Chancellor Vaxtul's compound eyes focused on the display. Long-range spectral analysis indicates the hull composition contains elements found in only one system. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Sol. The reaction was immediate. Several representatives began speaking at once, their various languages creating a cacophony of alarm. Sol, the tiny yellow star on the very edge of mapped space, home to a single inhabited world that had only recently achieved interstellar capability. Earth, they called it, a backwater planet whose inhabitants had barely begun to explore their own solar system. "Impossible!" hissed Trade Prince Velthar through his breathing apparatus. "Human technology is centuries behind ours. They still use chemical propulsion for most of their vessels." "Yet here it sits," Vaxtul replied grimly. "A ship that our combined fleets couldn't match, originating from a species we dismissed as primitive." The implication struck each representative like a physical blow. Humanity had been largely ignored by the galactic community. Too young, too isolated, too technologically inferior to matter. First contact protocols had been established but never initiated, with most civilizations agreeing to let the humans develop naturally for another few centuries before formal introduction. Now it seemed that humanity had other plans. "What do they want?" whispered Ambassador Quilra. As if in response to her question, the massive ship began to move. Long-range sensors tracked its course change, and the trajectory became clear within moments. It was heading directly for the Galactic Council's seat of power, the Nexus Station, built in the neutral zone between the 3 major galactic powers. The ship that had remained silent for 3 cycles finally transmitted a message. It was brief, transmitted in perfect galactic standard, the voice calm and unmistakably human. "This is Captain Rain Valdris of the Earth vessel Leviathan. We are en route to the Nexus Station for formal diplomatic contact. Prepare for our arrival." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Outside the viewport, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath as humanity announced its presence to the galaxy, not as supplicants seeking acceptance, but as equals demanding recognition. The age of human obscurity was over. 3 days. Later, the Leviathan dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Nexus station's defense perimeter. The station's massive orbital platforms, each one a fortress capable of defending entire systems, looked like toys in comparison to the human vessel. Captain Rain Valdris stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the view screen display the nervous dance of alien warships maintaining what they hoped was a safe distance. "Admiral Keksavar is requesting permission to come aboard," reported Lieutenant Commander Yuki Nakamura from the communications station. Her voice carried just a hint of amusement. "He's quite insistent about formal protocols." Valdris nodded, her weathered face betraying nothing. At 62, she had seen humanity's first tentative steps beyond their solar system and had commanded vessels during the dark years when Earth's colonies struggled for survival against cosmic indifference. The galaxy was about to learn what that struggle had forged. "Grant permission. Docking Bay 7. And Commander Nakamura?" She turned to face her communications officer. "Activate the full sensor suite. Let them see what they're dealing with." Across the expanse of space, every sensor array on every ship registered the same impossible readings. The Leviathan wasn't just large, it was a technological marvel that defied their understanding of physics. Its hull showed no seams, no obvious weapon. Ports, yet energy signatures suggested weaponry that could crack planets. More disturbing still were the secondary readings. The ship wasn't alone. Admiral Keksavar of the Galactic Defense Fleet materialized in the Leviathan's docking bay, his ceremonial armor doing little to hide his nervousness. The Tholvani were a proud warrior race descended from apex predators, but even his genetically enhanced courage faltered in the face of human architecture. The corridors of the ship seemed to pulse with barely contained power, and every surface hummed with activity he couldn't comprehend. Captain Valdris met him at the airlock, flanked by 2 members of her crew. She wore a simple military uniform, bearing no recognizable insignia, yet carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to absolute authority. "Admiral," she said, offering a slight nod. "Welcome aboard the Leviathan." Keksavar's translator struggled with the human dialect, but the meaning was clear. "Captain Valdris, I am here as a representative of the Galactic Council to discuss your intentions." Of course. Valdris gestured for him to follow. "Let's walk." As they moved through the ship's corridors, Keksavar's tactical mind cataloged details that filled him with growing dread. The crew they passed numbered in the thousands, all moving, with military precision. Their equipment was uniformly advanced, their bearings suggesting extensive combat experience. These weren't the primitive beings the galaxy had expected. "Your ship," Keksavar began carefully, "it's impressive. Our analysts are having difficulty understanding its construction." 700 years of innovation tends to accelerate when survival is at stake, Valdris replied conversationally. "You'd be surprised what humans can accomplish when properly motivated." They entered a vast observation deck where Admiral Keksavar stopped dead. Through the transparent aluminum windows, the full scope of human capability became clear. The Leviathan wasn't alone. It was surrounded by a fleet of smaller vessels that had somehow remained undetected until now. Dozens of ships, each one incorporating technology decades ahead of anything in galactic databases. "How?" he whispered. Valdris joined him at the window. "The galaxy made an assumption about humanity based on limited data. You saw our early chemical, rockets, and assumed that represented our peak achievement. What you didn't account for was our adaptability." She activated a holographic display showing Earth's solar system. "When we discovered we weren't alone in the universe, we also discovered we were considered insignificant. That realization changed everything. We unified. We innovated. We prepared. The display shifted to show massive construction yards built into asteroid belts, advanced research facilities hidden throughout the Kuiper Belt, a civilization that had transformed itself while remaining invisible to galactic observation. For 3 centuries, we've watched the galaxy. We've seen empires rise and fall, witnessed the casual cruelty of advanced civilizations, observed the pattern of conquest and subjugation that passes for diplomacy out here. Valdris's voice hardened. We decided we would not be conquered. Admiral, Keksavar felt his 3 hearts hammering in his chest. What do you want from us? Valdris turned to face him, and for the first time, she smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Admiral, we don't want anything from you. We're here to offer you something, a choice. The galaxy can continue as it has, with endless wars, slavery, and the strong devouring the weak, or it can adapt to a new reality. She gestured to the fleet surrounding them. Humanity is claiming its place among the stars. The question isn't what we want from the galaxy. It's what the galaxy is willing to do to coexist with us. Outside the windows, the human fleet began to move into formation, their weapons systems charging with a sound like distant thunder. The negotiation was about to begin. The Nexus Station's main conference chamber had been hastily reconfigured to accommodate the unprecedented gathering. Representatives from every major galactic power sat in tense silence as Captain Valdris entered, flanked by her senior staff. The humans took their seats at the central table with calm confidence, seemingly unbothered by the dozens of alien dignitaries whose civilizations collectively controlled thousands of star systems. High Chancellor Vayex Tool called the session to order, her compound eyes betraying none of the fear that had gripped the station since the human fleet's arrival. Captain Valdris, the Galactic Council recognizes Earth's emergence as a spacefaring civilization. We welcome the opportunity for diplomatic contact. Thank you, Chancellor, Valdris replied, her tone neutral. Though I should clarify, we're not seeking recognition or membership in your council. We're here to establish new parameters for galactic coexistence. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. Trade Prince Velthar leaned forward, his breathing apparatus hissing. New parameters? Captain, with respect, humanity has only recently achieved interstellar travel. Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding about— There's no misunderstanding, interrupted Commander Lysander Kane, Valdris's strategic advisor. His augmented left eye whirred as it focused on the trade prince. You've based your assumptions about human capability on 300-year-old intelligence. Let me bring you up to date. The chamber's holographic displays activated, showing detailed schematics of human technology. The assembled representatives fell silent as they absorbed the implications. Faster-than-light drives that operated on entirely unknown principles, weapons systems that manipulated matter at the quantum level, defense grids that could render entire fleets inoperative without firing a shot. Impossible, breathed Regent Morthak, his cybernetic brain processing the data streams. These technologies, they represent advances centuries beyond current galactic standards. 7 centuries of focused development, explained Dr. Petra Voss, the expedition's chief scientist. When humanity learned we weren't alone, we also learned we were vulnerable. That knowledge drove innovations your civilizations never needed to pursue. Admiral Keksavar shifted uncomfortably. Captain, if humanity possesses such capabilities, why reveal them now? Why not remain hidden? Valdris leaned back in her chair. Because the galaxy is about to change, Admiral. The old system, the endless cycle of conquest and submission, is ending. Humanity is offering an alternative. And if we refuse? Asked Chancellor Vayaxtel. The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Valdris glanced at her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Jin Park, who nodded slightly. Then you'll be welcome to maintain the status quo, Valdris said calmly. Within the boundaries that humanity establishes. The implications sent shockwaves through the chamber. Boundary Empress Thexara of the Crimson Nebula Coalition rose from her seat, her energy form crackling with indignation. "You speak of boundaries? As if you have the authority to enforce them. One ship, however advanced." "Not one ship," Commander Kane interrupted. "Show them, Jin." Lieutenant Commander Park activated her console, and the chamber's main display shifted to show long-range sensor readings. The assembled representatives watched in growing horror as the data revealed the truth. Dozens of human fleets positioned throughout the galaxy, each one comparable to the force surrounding Nexus Station. "How long?" whispered Trade Prince Velthar. "We've been preparing for this moment for 3 centuries, Valdris answered. "Every major trade route, every strategic system, every seat of galactic power, we've been watching, learning, positioning." The revelation struck each representative differently. Some sat in stunned silence, others began frantic communications with their home governments. The hegemony's warhawks huddled together, calculating the impossibility of coordinated resistance against forces they couldn't locate or predict. "What are your terms?" Chancellor Vaxtool asked, her voice hollow. "Simple," Valdris replied. "Slavery ends. Conquest of pre-spaceflight civilizations ends. The exploitation of primitive species ends. In return, humanity offers partnership, shared technology, mutual defense, and trade relationships based on equality rather than domination." "And if our governments refuse?" Admiral Kexavar asked. Dr. Voss activated another display, showing a detailed analysis of the Galactic Council's military capabilities compared to demonstrated human technology. The math was stark. Combined galactic forces might be able to inflict casualties, but they couldn't win. "Then those governments will be replaced by ones more interested in peaceful coexistence," Valdris said matter-of-factly. "We're not conquerors, but we won't tolerate the continuation of systemic oppression." The chamber fell into absolute silence. The age of galactic empires built on subjugation was ending, not through revolution from below, but through the arrival of a species that possessed both the power and the will to enforce a new order. "You're offering us a choice between surrender and annihilation," Boundary Empress Thexara said bitterly. "No," Valdris corrected. "We're offering you a choice between cooperation and irrelevance. The galaxy will be peaceful. The question is whether your civilizations want to be part of that peace or obstacles to it." Outside the station, the human fleet maintained its positions, waiting for the galaxy's answer. 3 days after the Nexus Station summit, the galaxy's response came not through diplomatic channels, but through the roar of plasma cannons and the brilliant flash of antimatter warheads. The hegemony's first battle fleet, 200 vessels strong, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the coordinates where the human fleet Serenity's Edge maintained its patrol along the contested border between hegemony space and the free colonies. Fleet Admiral Zefkul of the hegemony stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Apex destroyer, watching his tactical displays with satisfaction. Intelligence reports suggested the humans had scattered their forces too thinly across the galaxy. A decisive victory here would shatter the myth of human invincibility and rally the other empires to resistance. "Target the lead human vessel," he ordered. "Full bombardment. Show them the price of threatening the hegemony." The Serenity's Edge, commanded by Captain Miranda Cross, received the attack with what appeared to be stoic resignation. The human ship, barely a quarter the size of the hegemony flagship, made no attempt to flee or call for reinforcements. Instead, it simply waited as 200 alien warships closed to attack range. "Captain," reported Tactical Officer Dylan Webb from his station, "they're charging weapons. Looks like they're committed to this course of action." Captain Cross nodded, her expression serene despite the overwhelming odds. At 45, she had served through humanity's expansion into deep space and understood the psychology of galactic powers better than most. "Signal the fleet. Implement Protocol 7. Across human space, the message was received and acknowledged. "Protocol 7. Demonstrative response authorized. The gloves were coming off." "Incoming fire," Webb announced calmly. The hegemony's opening salvo should have vaporized the human vessel. Plasma beams capable of melting battleship armor, antimatter missiles that could crack asteroid-sized targets, particle accelerators that could punch through any known shielding, all of it struck the Serenity's edge simultaneously. The human ship remained undamaged. Fleet Admiral Zefkul stared at his displays in disbelief. Impossible. Nothing could survive that bombardment. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the human vessel it's not just undamaged. Our weapons didn't even register impact. It's like they struck some kind of barrier." On the Serenity's edge, Captain Cross examined the readouts from their defensive systems. The hegemony's weapons had been absorbed and dissipated by humanity's quantum field generators, technology derived from studying the fundamental forces that held atoms together. "Their turn," she said quietly. "Dylan, single shot. Disable their flagship's weapon systems." "Aye, Captain." The human ship's response was almost anticlimactic. A brief pulse of energy, barely visible to the naked eye, reached across space at light speed. When it struck the Apex destroyer, the hegemony flagship's weapons arrays simply stopped working. No explosions, no dramatic system failures. The ship's offensive capabilities were surgically removed without harming the crew or affecting life support. "What happened?" Fleet Admiral Zefkul demanded. "Sir, our weapon systems have been completely disabled. The humans somehow disrupted the quantum bonds in our plasma conduits and antimatter containment systems. Everything's powered down, but it's not repairable. They've actually altered the molecular structure of our weapons." The implications hit Zefkul like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just defeated his weapons. They had demonstrated the ability to selectively disable any technology they chose, rendering his entire fleet helpless without casualties. "This is Captain Cross of the Serenity's Edge," came the calm human voice over the communication channel. "Fleet Admiral Zefkul, you are no longer capable of offensive action. I suggest you use this time to reconsider your government's position on peaceful coexistence. You cannot defeat the entire hegemony with one ship," Zefkul raged. "No," Cross agreed, "but I don't need to." The tactical display lit up with new contacts as 17 more human vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel, surrounding the disabled hegemony fleet. Each ship was relatively small by galactic standards, but their energy signatures indicated technology so far beyond current understanding that resistance was meaningless. "Fleet Admiral," Cross continued, "your vessels are free to return to hegemony space. Take this message to your government. Humanity's offer stands. Peaceful, coexistence or irrelevance. There won't be a second demonstration." As the hegemony fleet limped home with their weapons permanently disabled, similar encounters began occurring throughout the galaxy. The Crimson Nebula Coalition's raiding fleets found their ships' engines mysteriously failing whenever they approached. Primitive worlds. The Trade Consortium's slave ships discovered their cargo holds mysteriously opening whenever they attempted to transport sentient beings against their will. In each case, the human message was the same. The old ways were ending. The galaxy could adapt or be adapted. Within hours, emergency sessions were being called in every major capital. The demonstration had been subtle but unmistakable. Humanity possessed the power to enforce their vision of galactic order, and they had shown restraint only to prove that cooperation was preferable to subjugation. The first test was over. Humanity had passed. Now it was the galaxy's turn. The emergency gathering on the neutral world of Varix Prime represented the largest collection of galactic leadership in recorded history. 37 heads of state, fleet commanders, and trade. Barons had abandoned their home systems to attend what many believed would be their civilization's final council of war. Emperor Vorthak the Eternal, ruler of the hegemony for 6 centuries, paced before the assembled leaders like a caged predator. His massive frame, enhanced by generations of genetic modification, radiated barely contained fury. The humiliation of his fleet's defeat had shaken his empire to its core. They made fools of us, he snarled, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. 200 ships of the line, reduced to scrap metal by a single human vessel. Our people whisper of human invincibility. Our enemies grow bold. This cannot stand. Trade. Prince Velthar's breathing apparatus hissed nervously. Emperor, perhaps we should consider... Consider what? Vorthak whirled on the merchant prince. Surrender? Submission to these upstart primitives? I have conquered 40 star systems. I have ended civilizations older than humanity's written history. I will not bow to creatures who discovered fire yesterday. Boundary Empress. Thexara's energy form flickered with agitation. Your pride blinds you, Vorthak. The humans have positioned fleets throughout our territories. They've demonstrated technology centuries beyond our understanding. Perhaps negotiation from a position of weakness is surrender. The Emperor's eyes blazed with absolute conviction. I propose we show these humans what true galactic power looks like. High Chancellor Vaextol of the Council clicked her mandibles in distress. Emperor, the tactical analysis is clear. Our combined fleets might inflict casualties, but the cost of resistance is irrelevant compared to the cost of capitulation. Vorthak activated the chamber's holographic display, showing the distribution of galactic military assets. We are talking about every major fleet, every planetary defense grid, every weapon system in known space, coordinating a single massive strike. Admiral Kexavar leaned forward. A simultaneous attack on all human positions, even if they're as advanced as they claim, they can't be everywhere at once. Exactly. The Emperor's smile was predatory. We overwhelm them through sheer numbers. Even superior technology has limits. The debate that followed was intense and desperate. Some leaders argued for caution, others for acceptance of human terms. But Emperor Vorthak's voice carried the weight of military might, and fear of human retribution was slowly being overcome by fear of appearing weak to their own people. The vote. Chancellor Vaextol announced reluctantly. All in favor of coordinated military resistance? 22. Voices answered in the affirmative. 15 abstained. None voted against. The die was cast. Captain Valdris received the intelligence report while reviewing patrol schedules in her ready room aboard the Leviathan. Commander Kane delivered the information with his characteristic directness. Lysander, "They're really going to do it?" she asked, setting down her coffee cup. "Every major fleet in the galaxy, converging on our position simultaneously. The hegemony is providing coordination, but this represents a genuine galactic alliance." Kane paused. "They're terrified, Rain. Terrified enough to risk everything. On one decisive battle." Valdris stood and moved to her viewport, watching the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, thousands of alien warships were preparing for what they believed would be the battle for galactic freedom. She felt an unexpected sadness. How long until they're in position? 18 hours. They're calling it the Great Liberation. Poetic, considering they're the ones doing the oppressing. And our people? Ready. Dr. Voss's teams have been preparing. For this possibility since we left Earth, the galaxy is about to learn why humanity spent 3 centuries preparing for war. Valdris nodded slowly. Send the message to all human commanders. Operation Daybreak is authorized. Throughout human space, the order was received with grim determination. Aboard research vessels disguised as merchant ships, science teams activated, equipment that had been 7 decades in development. Near major population centers, carefully positioned humanity vessels began broadcasting on frequencies that had been precisely calculated to interact with alien technology. In 16 hours, the largest military engagement in galactic history would begin. But the battle would be decided by humanity's greatest weapon. Not superior firepower, but superior understanding of the physical laws that govern the universe itself. The galaxy, had chosen war. Humanity would show them why peace was the only rational option. As the final preparations began, Captain Valdris composed a message that would be broadcast to every inhabited world after the coming demonstration. To the peoples of the galaxy, your governments have chosen to resist the ending of oppression through violence. What follows is not conquest, but correction. When the smoke clears, the galaxy will be at peace. The only question is whether your leaders will be part of that peace or a footnote in its history. The message would be transmitted in 18 hours. By then, the old galactic order would be over. The combined fleets of 47 galactic civilizations moved through hyperspace in perfect coordination, their faster-than-light drives synchronized to deliver the largest concentrated attack in recorded history. Over 10,000 warships, representing the full military might of known space, converged on human positions with the fury of entire civilizations fighting for their perceived freedom. Emperor Vorthak stood on the command bridge of his new flagship, Eternal Dominion, watching the tactical displays with grim satisfaction. The coordination was flawless. Millennia of warfare between various galactic powers had at least taught them how to work together when facing a common threat. "All fleets report ready, Emperor," announced his tactical coordinator. "Simultaneous emergence in 17 minutes. "Signal all commanders," Vorthak commanded. "Remember, overwhelming force, no mercy. The humans have shown they can disable individual ships, but they cannot face the entire galaxy. Today, we reclaim our sovereignty." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as fleet commanders prepared their forces for what every strategist agreed would be the decisive engagement. The humans had scattered their forces too widely, leaving individual fleets vulnerable to coordinated assault. Simple mathematics suggested that even advanced technology could be overwhelmed by sufficient numbers. They were about to learn how wrong mathematics could be. Dr. Petra Voss stood in the primary laboratory aboard the Leviathan, surrounded by instruments that represented humanity's deepest understanding of universal constants. Her team had spent decades preparing for this moment, the practical application of theoretical physics on a galactic scale. "Quantum resonance generators are online," reported her assistant, Dr. Marcus Kane. "All human vessels are synchronized to the master frequency." Voss nodded, checking the readings one final time. "The aliens believe this is about superior weapons technology. They still don't understand what they're really fighting." Captain Valdris's voice came through the communication system. "Dr. Voss, you are authorized to proceed. Operation Daybreak is active." "Acknowledged, Captain." Voss turned to her team. "Gentlemen, ladies, activate the quantum field generators. Let's remind the galaxy why humanity spent 3 centuries studying the fundamental forces of reality itself." Throughout human space, carefully positioned vessels began broadcasting precisely tuned quantum frequencies. The signals were invisible, undetectable by conventional sensors, and traveled at the speed of light in all directions. But their effects would be anything but subtle. The galactic fleets dropped out of hyperspace simultaneously, their emergence coordinated to the microsecond. Emperor Vorthak watched his tactical display light up with thousands of friendly contacts as the largest military force in history materialized at the coordinates of human patrol fleets. "Begin the attack," he commanded. 10,000 warships opened fire in perfect synchronization. The combined firepower could have sterilized entire star systems, reduced planets to component atoms, vaporized anything ever built by sentient life. Instead, something impossible happened. The weapons simply stopped working, not disabled, stopped. Plasma conduits that had operated flawlessly for centuries suddenly found their energy unable to maintain coherence. Antimatter containment systems that had been perfected over millennia discovered their magnetic fields no longer functioned properly. Particle accelerators found their atomic targets behaving according to different physical laws. "Report!" Emperor Vorthok demanded as his flagship's massive guns fell silent. "Sir, it's not just our weapons. Propulsion systems, life support, communication arrays. Everything is experiencing systematic failure at the quantum level. It's like the fundamental constants of physics have changed." Across the galaxy, the same phenomenon struck every attacking fleet simultaneously. Ships that had dominated star systems for centuries found themselves drifting helplessly as their technology simply ceased to function. Emergency life support systems activated automatically, keeping crews alive but rendering the galaxy's most advanced warships no more dangerous than metal sculptures. "Impressive coordination," Captain Cross observed from the bridge of the Serenity's edge. Around her ship, the hegemony's second battle fleet hung motionless in space, their crews, no doubt, struggling to understand what had happened to their supposedly invincible technology. "How long will the field effect last?" asked her tactical officer. "Dr. Voss estimates approximately 6 hours for full systems recovery," Cross replied. "Long enough to make the point, but not long enough to cause permanent damage to life support. Systems." She activated the general communication channel. "This is Captain Cross to all galactic forces. Your weapons and propulsion systems have been temporarily disabled through quantum field manipulation. This effect is reversible and will fade naturally within hours. Your crews are safe, your ships intact." She paused, letting the implications sink in across thousands of vessels. "However, I want you to understand what has just occurred. Humanity has demonstrated the ability to selectively alter the fundamental constants of physics within localized space-time regions. We can make your technology stop working simply by changing how atoms behave in your vicinity." The silence on all communication channels was absolute. Your governments chose war because they believed superior numbers could overcome superior technology. They were wrong. This was not a battle between fleets. This was a demonstration of humanity's mastery of the physical laws that govern reality itself. Emperor Vorthok, listening from his dead flagship, felt something he had not experienced in 6 centuries of conquest: genuine terror. "The offer stands," Captain Cross continued. "Peaceful coexistence or irrelevance. But understand, the next time galactic forces are raised against humanity, the effects will not be temporary. As human vessels began approaching the disabled fleets, their intentions became clear. They were offering assistance, rescue operations for ships whose crews were now completely helpless. The gesture was as pointed as it was generous. Humanity could have left their enemies to drift helplessly in space, but chose mercy instead. The last war was over before it had truly begun. The galaxy's new age had arrived. 6 months after the day that would be remembered as the Great Silencing, Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, watching construction crews from dozens of species work together on humanity's first joint galactic project. The station would serve as the new center of interstellar cooperation, built not through conquest or coercion, but through the shared recognition that the old ways had led only to endless conflict. The transformation had been swift once the galaxy's leadership accepted the new reality. Emperor Vorthok, stripped of his military power but granted the opportunity to transition his empire toward peaceful governance, had surprised many by embracing the change with the same absolute conviction he had once shown for conquest. The hegemony was now leading efforts to establish universal education standards and had voluntarily freed over 3 million enslaved beings. The Crimson Nebula Coalition has officially ratified the Galactic Cooperation Accords, reported Director Kumar, Vasquez's chief of staff, as he joined her at the viewport. That makes 43 signatories out of 47 major powers. Vasquez nodded, still watching the construction crews. Humans worked alongside hegemony engineers, their combined expertise creating technologies neither species could have developed alone. And the holdouts? The void-touched remain in isolation, but their territories are too remote to affect core galactic commerce. The merchant syndicate of Arcturus is still negotiating the terms of their participation. They're having trouble adapting to trade relationships based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. They'll adapt, Vasquez said confidently. Or they'll find themselves irrelevant as the rest of the galaxy moves forward. The changes had been profound and rapid. The systematic oppression that had characterized galactic civilization for millennia was ending, replaced by cooperative frameworks that emphasized mutual advancement. The slave trade had collapsed within weeks as human technology made forced labor economically obsolete. Conquest of primitive civilizations had become impossible as human monitoring systems detected and prevented any attempts at subjugation. Most remarkably, the galaxy had not descended into chaos. Instead, freed from the constant threat of warfare and subjugation, civilizations were discovering unprecedented opportunities for growth and cooperation. Ambassador, Director Kumar continued, Captain Valdris is requesting a priority meeting. The deep space monitoring stations have detected something significant. Vasquez turned from the viewport, intrigued. What kind of something? Unknown. Contact approaching from beyond the galactic rim. The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. An hour later, Vasquez found herself in the Leviathan's primary briefing room, surrounded by humanity's senior command staff and representatives from the major galactic powers. The holographic display showed a vast region of space beyond the galaxy's outer edge, where something was approaching at velocities that defied conventional understanding. First contact with the unknown vessel occurred 6 hours ago, Captain Valdris explained. Long-range analysis suggests technology even more advanced than our own, significantly more advanced. High Chancellor Vaextul, representing the Reformed Galactic Council, clicked her mandibles nervously. Another humanity-level civilization? Potentially, Dr. Voss replied from her position at the science station. But the energy signatures suggest they're operating on principles we haven't discovered yet. If they're hostile, then the galaxy will face them together, Ambassador Vasquez stated firmly. This is exactly why humanity insisted on cooperation rather than conquest. United, we're stronger than any individual empire ever was. Emperor Vorthok, now bearing the title of Cooperation Chancellor for the Reformed Hegemony, leaned forward. Captain Valdris, what are your recommendations? Valdris smiled, not the predatory expression she had worn during the early negotiations, but one of genuine confidence born from shared purpose. We meet them as equals, as a unified galactic civilization, not as fractured empires. If they come in peace, we welcome them. If they come with hostile intent. She gestured to the display showing the combined fleets of 43 civilizations now operating under joint command protocols. Human quantum field generators protected ships whose crews included species that had been mortal enemies mere months ago. Advanced hegemony engineering enhanced human vessels that carried Nexari diplomats and Tholvani tactical specialists. They'll discover that the galaxy has learned to defend itself as one people, not many scattered tribes. The approaching vessel, Analysis, suggested it was actually a massive city ship containing millions of beings, continued its steady approach toward galactic space. Its communications attempts had been limited to mathematical sequences, suggesting intelligence but no common linguistic framework. Dr. Voss activated additional displays showing the combined technological capabilities now available to the Galactic Alliance. The integration process has accelerated beyond our most optimistic projections. Hegemony metallurgy combined with human quantum manipulation has produced hull materials that are essentially indestructible. Nexari biotechnology merged with our medical knowledge has eliminated most known diseases across 47 species. And their weapons? Asked Admiral Kexvar, who now commanded the Galactic Defense Force, a truly integrated military organization, drawing from the best traditions of dozens of warrior cultures. More importantly, Captain Valdris interjected, their motivations. The galaxy spent millennia assuming that contact with advanced civilizations meant conquest or submission. Humanity proved that assumption wrong. Now we have the opportunity to demonstrate that lesson to the cosmos itself. The meeting concluded with unanimous agreement. The galaxy would meet these newcomers as a unified civilization, offering the same choice humanity had once presented: peaceful coexistence as equals, or isolation if they preferred conquest. 3 days later, the massive alien city ship entered the outer solar system of Varix Prime, and the galaxy held its breath. The vessel was beautiful in its alienness, flowing organic curves that suggested a civilization that had evolved far beyond the mechanical approach favored by most known species. Its communications attempts had grown more sophisticated now, including complex musical patterns that some xenolinguists believed might represent emotional concepts. Captain Valdris, commanding a joint task force of human, hegemony, and council vessels, opened communications on all frequencies. Unknown vessel, you are approaching the territory of the Galactic Cooperation Alliance. We represent 43 starfaring civilizations united in peaceful coexistence. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. The response came not as words, but as a complex harmony of tones that somehow conveyed meaning directly. To the minds of all listeners, regardless of species, we are the Gardeners. We travel between island universes, seeking civilizations that have learned to grow beyond the cycle of conquest and consumption. We have watched your galaxy for many cycles, waiting for wisdom to emerge from warfare. The communication paused, and when it resumed, there was something that could only be described as cosmic satisfaction in the harmonies. The transformation we have witnessed here, the ending of systematic oppression, the unity of diverse peoples, the choice of cooperation over domination, this represents a fundamental evolution in consciousness. Your galaxy has graduated. Ambassador Vasquez, present on the joint command ship, stepped forward. Graduated to what? To membership in the greater community. There are other galaxies, other alliances of civilizations that have made the same choice. Your peoples have made. The universe is vast, and life is precious. Those who learn to nurture rather than destroy are welcome among the stars. The implications struck every representative simultaneously. The galaxy's transformation had been noticed, not just by its own inhabitants, but by cosmic intelligences that spanned multiple galaxies. Humanity's insistence on peaceful coexistence hadn't just ended galactic warfare. It had qualified their entire region of space for membership in something unimaginably larger. We offer knowledge, friendship, and access to wonders beyond your current imagination. But first, a question. Will your alliance accept species not born in this galaxy? We carry refugees from civilizations that chose destruction over cooperation. They seek new homes. Captain Valdris looked around the command center, seeing representatives of species that had been bitter enemies 6 months ago now working in perfect harmony. The question answered itself. Send them our coordinates, she said simply. The galaxy has room for all peaceful peoples. As the great city ship began transmitting detailed information about interdimensional cooperation protocols and technologies that operated on scales beyond galactic boundaries, Emperor Vorthak turned to Ambassador Vasquez with something approaching wonder in his ancient eyes. The humans were right, he said quietly. Conquest leads only to isolation. Cooperation leads to the stars themselves. Outside the viewports of dozens of ships, the lights of the Gardener city ship began pulsing in complex patterns, teaching the first lessons of technologies that would carry galactic civilization to achievements beyond imagination. The age of warfare was over. The age of cosmic citizenship had begun. And somewhere in the vast Alliance fleet, Captain Rain Valdris smiled as she watched humanity's greatest victory unfold. Not through superior firepower, but through the simple recognition that in a universe full of wonders, peace was the only rational choice. The galaxy had learned to grow. Now it was time to reach for the infinite. In the years that followed, the Galactic Cooperation Alliance would become the foundation for an intergalactic confederation spanning multiple dimensions. The transformation that began with humanity's demand for peaceful coexistence would echo across the cosmos, proving that even the vastest empires could learn to choose cooperation over conquest. The last Great War had ended not in victory or defeat, but in the recognition that true strength came from unity and true power from the choice to nurture rather than destroy.